Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm here today with Rohan MacMahon from Climate Venture Capital Fund. My name's Esther Whitehead, ko Esther Whitehead tokuingoa, and I'm here from the Funders' Commitment on Climate Action. So our role is really about leveraging the power of philanthropy towards climate action and biodiversity protection. We work with large funders right through to some smaller entities, and very much around kind of showing leadership in a tiriti-led model. Rohan's familiar with our work, but today I'm talking to Rohan about his role with climate investment. And welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Esther, and kia ora koutou, ko Rohan MacMahon toko ingoa. So I'm Rohan, I'm a partner here at the Climate Venture Capital Fund based in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. And you asked me, Esther, to talk about who I am and what we do here at the fund. So I'll give you just a very quick description of who we are and who I am. I'm our team's nominal Australian. I've been here in New Zealand since 2010, originally from Sydney. And I've spent most of my career working in technology, investment and sustainability. I've had a long-standing passion for sustainability and conservation and a long-standing concern about climate change and what we're doing about it. The Climate Venture Capital Fund is part of a group called 2040 Ventures, which is a well-established venture capital manager that's been operating since 2014. We started Climate VC Fund, or Climate Venture Capital Fund, in 2020, really as an effort to accelerate our progress in emissions reduction in this part of the world. How do we do that? By placing equity investment into early stage companies, which are technology companies that are taking on some really thorny decarbonisation problems and puzzles. We've been doing that for about 6 years now. We have a second edition of our fund, and essentially it's about bringing together capital investment with climate technology opportunities, recognising the risks of climate change, which become more apparent to us every day, but also helping us to try to be able to do something about that, and also to realise some of the opportunities from the energy transition.
Cool, thank you for that wee overview. I guess the reason that I'm interviewing you today is because I'm also interested in some of those underlying mechanisms that either incentivize us or kind of prevent people from doing harm, and opportunities that enable change. And I've worked kind of a lot in the policy space, I've worked a lot in the grassroots space, and obviously through my own learnings, I recognise the underlying mechanism of money and capital flow. That intersection is kind of why I'm here today to speak with you. You've given us a little bit of background about where you've come from and the fund itself. What actually drives you, though, to work at this particular intersection of climate and capital, and what's really inspired you to kind of give your life to this?
Well, climate change is a really large, thorny topic. It can seem overwhelming, sort of all-encompassing, and we sometimes feel like we don't have personal agency to do very much about it. And sometimes we take individual actions that we may think are very minor, even pointless. But we actually have a lot of personal agency in this debate and in this discourse and in this movement. Whether we're choosing to vote at the ballot box, making a purchase decision at the supermarket, choosing the products and services that are around us, or choosing what we do with our money, there are a whole range of ways in which we can get involved in being on the right side of history on climate change. In my particular case, I realised that I'm an ex-company founder, so I've worked a lot with technology and with the people who run technology companies. It's not an easy thing to be a company founder, but one of the things that really makes their life easy is having sympathetic and well-aligned investors who bring capital to support them and make them go faster. That is not something we have done super successfully at a really large scale here in Aotearoa to date. It's something where there are some fantastic technology success stories from companies like Xero and Vend and Timely and so forth, but they're relatively small in number, and our tech sector is developing quickly but is still underdeveloped, and more capital would really help that to go faster. So you bring that interest in technology investment and experience in that area together with climate, and the question I was asking myself is, what could I be doing? And, why wouldn't I do it? Is there something that I would look back on here and think, well, we missed the opportunity, we could have helped more, but we didn't. It'd be a shame to feel like you hadn't taken up the opportunity to do more. And we've always known, if you're into climate, we've always known that the 2020s was the pivotal decade where there is still the chance to obviate a lot of harm, to turn emissions down, and to really kind of turn the corner on climate response. So that's something that motivates me personally. Lots of other people approach this topic in lots of different ways. I've been very honoured recently to be featured in this little book.
Yes, out comes the book.
Out comes the book.
Kiwis in Climate, and you are chapter 14.
I am indeed, with my good mate Carl Vink from the Whakatupu Foundation. Carl has led the discussion about venture philanthropy, which is where philanthropy and venture investment come together, and my perspective is as a more commercial investor. We are, just to be clear, the fund that I'm a partner at, we are commercial investors. We are trying to build a successful portfolio of technology companies that will deliver long-term venture capital returns to our investors. However, we only invest in firms that deliver material, measurable savings in greenhouse gas emissions through the products and services that they sell and the supply chains that they operate in. So we're trying to bring together commercial investment, which is institutional investment, NGO investment, individual investment through private investors, and also migrant investors, trying to bring all of those to bear on this puzzle. And the puzzle is, how do we accelerate emissions reduction by taking on some of the tougher challenges in decarbonisation? So there are clearly decarbonisation opportunities that you would call the low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
Buy a solar panel, change out to an EV, electrify your energy system, choose more active modes of transport. They're all things that one can do more or less today, but there is still a leftover pile, a substantial pile of tough emissions problems. There's some people call them hard to abate emissions. And we have found some fantastic opportunities to invest in companies that are taking on exactly those sorts of puzzles. So areas like chemicals, one company that I can think of that we've invested in, based in Wellington, has a new class of catalysts for the manufacturing of ammonia. Now, ammonia, they make 200 million tonnes of the stuff globally each year, and it has an extremely high emissions footprint because you basically squish together the nitrogen and hydrogen to make ammonia using fossil fuel gas to create that high temperature and pressure. This catalyst works at more ambient temperatures, so you can reduce the energy footprint by switching over to electricity. So that could be potentially 1.5 percentage points of global greenhouse gas emissions from a little company in Wellington. That's pretty cool. Other solutions we've found.
It's incredibly meaningful and provable and measurable. And I think perhaps, some of the tech that people don't see because it's not that kind of sexy front-facing thing is sometimes hard for them to get their heads around. So it's nice to be able to hear that and for you to be able to break down also globally what that looks like.
Yeah. And some of these sorts of categories that we invest in the sort of hard to abate space are products we don't necessarily see in our daily lives. It's because they're precursor products, things like chemicals, water treatment. Steel is a really large one. We've invested in a company based in Christchurch that is doing recovery of super high purity zinc from the waste from steel recycling. Now, obviously, construction is a given part of our economy. We need more houses, and some of the houses that we have need to be recycled from time to time, and our built environment in the commercial environment as well, not just the residential housing. So steel is an essential part of our world, yet steel has an absolutely enormous emissions footprint. So it's very interesting that a company in Christchurch coming out of the University of Canterbury has found a way to recover a lot more zinc that was previously wasted or recovered using a very emissions intensive technique. So it's basically helping us to decarbonise the zinc part of the steel supply chain. So again, exciting, albeit early stage Kiwi company taking on a pretty tough space and doing very well.
Thank you. It's good for us to have a little bit more understanding of that decarbonisation through the supply chain. And as you say, some of it is more invisible. For those that are interested in investing, whether they be a family trust or a large funder or an individual, what can you tell us about balancing the climate impact with the financial returns? There's a lot of misconceptions. Do you want to have the opportunity to bust a couple of those?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think energy transition is the future of the global economy. We're seeing an oil price shock just working its way through the system at the moment. The implications of that are not totally clear, but it certainly looks like it's going to be pretty inflationary. And if you're really wedded to the fossil fuel side of the system, then your costs are going up. The economics of you transitioning to something cleaner just get more compelling all the time. As I mentioned before, we're a venture capital investor, so we are aiming for venture capital-like returns with that provable, measured climate impact. But more broadly across the spectrum, there's a fantastic study from BCG last year that said a majority of climate solutions, whether it's something known and realisable today, like a solar panel, or something that's earlier stage and needs more development, like the sorts of things that we invest in, a majority of those solutions now cost less. So you may have a little bit of a time value to work through because you may have some capital investment to invest in the solution at first, but often that can be financed, and these solutions become more and more economic all the time. So people like me are trying really hard to make these solutions more compelling economically, to help them get more economies of scale so that they become cheaper. And as technology investors, we always look for things that are going to deliver more utility to the customer. So in the tech world, you'll often hear people talk about better, faster, cheaper. And I now say better, faster, cheaper, and with lower emissions. So better products and services that deliver, what our customers want at reasonable prices can be delivered today. That's the sort of business that we're in. And there's no reason to think that, so therefore there's no reason to think you can't correlate that clean impact with it being a successful business. So we're aiming to deliver the returns that the venture asset class expects, which is reasonably high returns. It's a relatively illiquid asset class, so it's not the place that you want to park all of your portfolio. If you're a portfolio investor like a philanthropic organisation, you probably do want to take quite a balanced approach across those different asset classes. But for the part of your portfolio that is specifically looking at investment in this part of the world to drive along our energy transition, to support our local economy and to help it grow, there's a very ready impact that can be had there, both economically and in terms of the emissions impact.
Thank you. And I think we just need to keep retelling the story that the price point has reached a tipping point, and that we are seeing that it's not just economically viable, but economically advantageous to make those shifts. So thank you for pointing that out. We are obviously acting against some huge political and corporate will to maintain the fossil fuel industry. So the shocks that we're currently seeing might be a bit of an eye-opener, right, to help us understand that dependencies.
Yeah, I think so. And in any technology transition, there's early adopters and sort of middle of the adoption curve, and there's late adopters. So one thing that I will say is that no one gets to opt out of climate, right? We're all surrounded by the atmosphere right now. So, you find your opportunities where you are as an individual. And, I think the Kiwis in Climate book is great at explaining to people in lots of different ways that there's lots of different things that you can do. If you're an investor, there are clearly things that you can do to be on the right side of history, but also to make great returns along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's just expand on that a little just before we leave the corridor today. So, when we think about this conversation, we think it is only limited to perhaps investors, but there are also founders of companies, there are people with ideas. And there are community partners. So you've just kind of touched on some of those things. What do you think are the first steps that people can take in terms of community members or people listening of how they can be involved in this big, overwhelming journey?
Well, obviously they should all buy the book.
Yeah.
No, there are lots of things that people can do, and it does depend on their own circumstance. So a community partner who might be an NGO with a well-funded portfolio of investments is in quite a different position from an individual who's thinking, I've got a startup idea. So maybe the answer is different for different people. But just to comment on both of those, for founders, New Zealand is a good place to start a business. It's reasonably easy to do so. And we have an investment community here that is hungry for those ideas. We
And
engage
growing.
with, and really growing, we engage with the university systems. We have some great founders coming out of the university systems, but also people who are, bringing their idea out of a garage. I'm talking to a young lady at the moment who's literally built her product in her kitchen. That's really exciting because it is novel, but it's also very cool that people can bring their ideas to the fore quite quickly. I think if you're a bigger organisation like a company or an NGO, it kind of comes down to your values and what you stand for and what capacity you have to contribute. I do think there's definitely an advocacy piece at the moment because governments around the world are not hearing clearly enough that we want to see change. And also humans are a communicative species. We gain by talking to one another. So if we just amplify those messages and talk about it more, I do think that's important. Talking, however, also needs to lead to action. So what's the action that you can take? If you're an investor, I hope that people will push capital towards these sorts of solutions and away from the legacy solutions that we're trying to replace. And also, talk amongst your peers about that because there is a growing number of people who are trying to do this sort of thing, not just here in New Zealand, but around the world. And so it is something where that journey is well underway, but it could certainly use more support.
Thank you. And look, we could talk for a long time on this. I have plenty to say around advocacy, around submit to all of those legislations that are being deregulated and dismantled. They make a big difference. So I thank you for your time today. And if people want to go and look for your products and services, where will they go?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, you can check out the Climate Venture Capital Fund at climatevcfund.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn and you can reach out to me directly if you wish. I'm a pretty approachable sort of guy.
Thank you for your time today. It's been great to talk with you.
Thank you very much.